Edward Hawthorne stood at the edge of his small British town, the sun casting gentle rays on the cobblestone streets he had known since childhood. Laughter echoed from the marketplace, a sound he cherished. It reminded him of simpler times spent with friends, dreaming of adventures beyond the horizon. His mother's warm smile and his father's steady hands reflected safety, a comforting cocoon in an unpredictable world. Yet, as whispers of war grew louder, the thrill of duty began to tug at his heart. Peer pressure and a desire to escape the mundane swirled within him, mingling with a deep-seated sense of obligation to protect his country. Leaving behind the laughter and warmth of home, Edward bravely enlisted, convinced that courage lay in the unknown. With every step closer to boot camp, innocence faded, replaced by an unmistakable anticipation that would lead him into the storm of battle, forever altering the fabric of his soul. As Edward stepped off the transport truck, the reality of boot camp hit him like the biting wind. The air was thick with the scent of sweat and fear, a cacophony of shouting sergeants and the rhythmic thud of marching boots echoing in his ears. He couldn't help but feel a pang of nostalgia for the simplicity of his life back home. Here, he found himself immersed in grueling routines, where exhaustion quickly became a companion. Each day consisted of endless drills, pushing him to physical limits he never knew existed, yet amidst the strain, he forged bonds with his fellow recruits. Laughter mingled with groans as they shared their aspirations and fears, each soldier's story woven into a tapestry of brotherhood. Edward found solace in this camaraderie, a spark of hope flickering in the darkness that surrounded their impending fate. Boot camp was transforming him, breaking him down to rebuild something far stronger. Edward stood at the edge of the airfield, clutching his deployment orders, a mix of excitement and dread tightening his chest. The bustling atmosphere around him, a cacophony of commands, soldiers hurriedly loading equipment onto trucks, felt surreal. He glanced at his fellow soldiers, their faces a blend of steely resolve and unspoken fears. It was their first taste of battle, and no amount of training could prepare them for the visceral chaos that awaited. As they boarded the transport, Edward's heart raced, memories of boot camp flooding back, the grueling drills, laughter shared under the weight of exhaustion, and the camaraderie that had formed among them. Each soldier's face was etched with determination, yet an underlying current of anxiety hummed in the air. Edward took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. This was it, the moment he had both longed for and dreaded. As the plane's engines roared to life, he silently prayed for courage amidst uncertainty. The chilling dawn was shattered by the distant roar of artillery, a cruel awakening from the brief slumber of innocence. As Edward stood among his comrades, clutching his rifle, the weight of dread settled upon his shoulders. The training at boot camp had prepared him in theory, yet nothing could replicate the visceral terror of that first engagement. The air crackled with tension as orders were barked, and seconds felt like hours. When the enemy's fire erupted, chaos overtook reason. Men plunged into the earth. Cries of anguish mingled with the thunderous blasts. Edward's heart raced. The cacophony drowned out any semblance of rational thought. Survival instincts kicked in. He moved instinctively, seeking shelter while pushing memories of laughter and home into a distant corner of his mind. Fear mingled with adrenaline, and amidst the horror, Edward realized this was no mere training exercise. This was war, and survival came at a staggering price. The bond between Edward Hawthorne and Tom deepened under the relentless weight of their shared experiences. In the midst of the chaos encircling them, they discovered fleeting moments of levity, laughter rippling through the darkness of wartime. A joke whispered during a lonesome night watch or a shared meal turned into a small celebration. These instances became their lifeline. As they dug trenches or carried supplies, their conversations were laced with vulnerabilities they dared not share with others. Fear gnawed at them both, but it was here, amidst camaraderie, that they found solace. The two young men, once strangers, now stood shoulder to shoulder, united by their hopes of survival and dreams of returning home. With each passing day, their friendship proved vital. It became a shield against despair and an anchor amidst the terrifying uncertainty that loomed on the battlefield, reinforcing Edward's unyielding spirit in the face of unimaginable danger. As the days dragged on, I found a thin paper envelope bearing the unmistakable handwriting of my mother, a lifeline to a world I yearned for. Each word danced before my eyes, filled with warmth and love, the familiar scent of home wafting through my mind. She spoke of the garden, its vibrant blooms, and the laughter of our neighbors as they gathered for afternoon tea. In contrast, here in the trenches, the mud and smoke suffocated my memories. Every letter served as both a comfort and a dagger, pricking at the deep ache of longing that gnawed at me ceaselessly. The laughter of my comrades felt distant, swallowed by the shadows of artillery fire, while their shared banter only deepened my isolation. I found solace in imagining my mother's smile, her gentle voice echoing in my mind, reminding me of the hope that tethered us across the vast chasm of war. As the echoes of gunfire faded momentarily, a somber silence draped over the battlefield, punctuated only by the sound of labored breaths. The days blurred into one another, but the memory of our friend James lay heavy in my heart. He had been full of vibrant dreams, a laughter that brightened our darkest hours, but now he lay injured, crumpled on the ground, his face etched with pain. The moments stretched endlessly as I held his trembling hand, feeling the warmth of life slowly slipping away. Morale shattered like glass across our platoon. Each injury was a wound to our collective spirit. We gathered in hushed circles, sharing traumas and vulnerability, drawing strength from one another. In the shadow of grief, lessons in compassion emerged, reminding us that amidst the chaos, we were bound not just by duty, but by the promise to honor those we lost. James's spirit compelled us to carry on, to fight not just for survival, but for hope. The night air was suffocating, thick with tension as Edward clutched his rifle, shadows dancing between trees like specters of fear. The moonlight barely pierced the darkness, reflecting the anxieties swirling in his mind. He and his comrades trudged softly, hearts pounding as they scanned for signs of movement. Whispers of the enemy haunted him. The hushed breaths of his friends felt like an echo in the silence. Suddenly, the stillness shattered. Gunfire erupted from the thicket, chaos spiraling in an instant. Edward's instincts kicked in, adrenaline surging as he ducked for cover, but the weight on his chest grew heavier with every shot. Amid the confusion, he witnessed a fellow soldier fall, a haunting reminder of their fragile existence. The guilt gnawed at Edward, a searing realization that this life bore a high price. In the darkness, he grappled with the stark truth. Survival carried its own scars, echoes of the lost growing louder in his mind. As the night wears on, the haunting memories of Edward's childhood surface, tinged with a bittersweet longing. He recalls the laughter of friends, the carefree days spent exploring the green fields of his hometown, and the warmth of his mother's embrace. Each recollection stands in stark contrast to the grim reality of the battlefield. The echo of gunfire intrudes upon these cherished memories, a cruel reminder of the fragility of life. In the stillness between engagements, Edward finds solace in nostalgia, yet it also torments him. How could innocence exist when the world around him is unraveling? He grapples with his identity, reflecting on who he was before the war and who he might become once it's over. The weight of these memories presses down on him, both comforting and suffocating. Here, in the shadows of despair, Edward understands that these fragments of his past will never fully align with the chaos of combat. The piercing chaos of battle slowly faded, giving way to a rare stillness that enveloped the soldiers like a gentle embrace. In this unexpected lull, Edward found himself surrounded by the echoes of laughter, a bittersweet symphony against the backdrop of the horrors they had just endured. They shared stories and jokes, their camaraderie shining brightly amidst the shadows that loomed large over their lives. Yet, holding tightly to the moment was a fragile thread of unspoken sorrow. Beneath the surface, the scars of trauma began to reveal themselves. Haunted glances and moments of silence punctured their joyful facade. Edward felt an unsettling weight in his heart, a reminder that this temporary reprieve was merely a facade, a fleeting escape from the relentless reality of their existence. As he looked around at his companions, the laughter felt both tender and tormenting, a beautiful yet shattered reminder of the innocence they had lost. The days dragged on, each one blurring into the next as we faced the harsh realities of war. With rations dwindling, we fought hunger as fiercely as we fought the enemy. Our supplies were meager, often limited to stale bread and a few scraps of meat, yet we shared whatever we had, binding us closer together through shared deprivation. Conversations around the fire turned philosophical. We discussed what it meant to survive and how much we were willing to sacrifice for a meal. Laughter sometimes broke through the tension, as we invented games to distract ourselves. But between the smiles, I saw the weariness in my comrades' eyes, the shadows of lingering doubts and fears beginning to take root. These small moments of camaraderie felt fleeting, a fragile comfort against the brutal backdrop of what awaited us. The weight of our shared burden was heavy, yet finding solace in each other was a flicker of hope in the darkness. Nightmares plague Edward's sleep, twisting his dreams into a merciless reflection of his waking fears. Each time he closes his eyes, he is thrust back into the thick of battle. Gunfire echoes, cries of agony resonate, and blood stains the hallowed earth. He awakens in a cold sweat, chest heaving, grappling with the images that haunt him, fragments of comrades lost forever in the fog of war. In these moments of profound terror, he yearns for peace, a longing that pierces deeper than the bullets that fly overhead. As the darkness of night stretches endlessly, Edward often finds himself staring into the distance, imagining a world unmarred by conflict. He envisions quiet meadows and laughter ringing through his home, moments that feel worlds away. Yet amid the brutality, the flicker of hope remains, a vow whispered into the night that one day he would find a way back to the life he left behind, far from the chaos that has consumed him. As the weeks blurred together, a new command caught Edward by surprise, orders for a sudden redeployment. The anxiety that had been simmering beneath the surface erupted, sending shockwaves through the platoon. Conversations that once swirled with bravado fell silent, replaced by anxious murmurs of uncertainty. Each man wrestled with unspoken fears. The unknown lay ahead like a dark horizon, obscured by the weight of their experiences. Edward found himself grappling with the implications of the new orders. Would this mission present another opportunity for bravery, or would it deepen their losses? He turned over the possibilities in his mind, feeling increasingly insignificant amidst the enormity of war. Standing on the edge of another chapter in this relentless saga, he yearned for clarity in a world shrouded in chaos. The ghost of home flickered in his thoughts like a mirage, reminding him of the life that lay beyond the battleground, just out of reach. The tension among the soldiers reached a boiling point, a pressure cooker of unspoken fears and frustrations. Edward found himself drifting through the ranks, feeling the isolation seep into his very core. Each night seemed to stretch endlessly, haunted by whispers of apprehension, the familiar faces of comrades morphing into shadows that blurred under the weight of trauma. In the confined quarters of their makeshift camp, silence hung heavy, punctuated only by the distant echoes of artillery fire that served as harbingers of anxiety. As paranoia crept in, Edward sought solace in fleeting moments. Staring at the stars, hidden beneath a blanket of darkness, he attempted to recapture the fleeting sense of peace that had once carried him through childhood. Each step alone felt like a desperate search for clarity, wrestling with thoughts that spiraled into worry for himself and his brothers in arms. In this relentless war, silence felt as oppressive as the guns, suffocating the warmth of camaraderie and sparking a deep yearning for hope. The evening air hung heavy with anticipation as I cautiously moved through the war-torn village, my heart pounding in rhythm with the distant echoes of gunfire. Unexpectedly, I stumbled upon a civilian, a woman clutching a child close to her chest, her eyes wide with fear yet filled with a flicker of hope. In that moment, an understanding passed between us, transcending the boundaries created by war. She offered me a slice of bread, a gesture of kindness amidst the horror, and I felt a warmth spread through me that I hadn't experienced in weeks. It struck me how, even in the darkest of times, humanity could prevail. I left her with a promise, one that weighed heavily on my heart, vowing to remember the faces and stories of those caught in this conflict. The sorrowful reality of our situation settled back in, but her unexpected kindness lingered, a beacon offering solace in those relentless shadows. In the midst of chaos, bravery emerged in the most unexpected moments. During a surprise attack, The sound of gunfire rang deafeningly in Edward's ears as he witnessed his comrade, Sergeant Reynolds, spring into action. With unwavering resolve, Reynolds charged into the fray to save a wounded soldier, his body a shield against the merciless fire. Edward's heart raced, simultaneously filled with admiration and dread, as he understood the weight of what was unfolding. The aftermath was a haunting silence, broken only by the cries of those left injured and the heavy breaths of those who had lived. Reynolds' sacrifice would echo in Edward's mind, a torch lighting the dark corners of his soul. Such acts of courage sparked inspiration in the hearts of the men who survived, yet for Edward, it left a bitter taste, reminding him of the fragile line between heroism and despair, a line he teetered upon with each passing day. The medical tent felt more like a shrine of suffering than a place of healing. As Edward entered, the harsh scent of antiseptic mingled with metallic undertones, a constant reminder of the battles fought and the lives hanging by a thread. Medics worked tirelessly, their hands steady yet haunted, binding wounds with practiced urgency. Edward watched a young soldier, barely older than himself, lying motionless, a blanket covering his still form. The sight struck his heart with an icy grip, evoking feelings of grief and helplessness. In this sacred space, stories of resilience and loss echoed softly, tangled with whispered prayers for the living. Edward learned from the medics, their dedication revealing deeper truths about the fragility of life. Each act of kindness emphasized the stark duality of war, its brutality juxtaposed with moments of profound humanity. As he left, the weight of grief settled on his shoulders, a poignant reminder of the price paid for survival. Confusion reigns as Edward crouches low, heart pounding, the sounds of battle an indistinguishable cacophony of shouts and gunfire. Each second stretches into eternity, the fog of war engulfing him. He strains to hear the orders barked out, but clarity evades him. Shadows flicker against the backdrop of artillery flashes, and panic grips the men around him, fueling a sense of paranoia. Trust erodes under the weight of fear. Every rustle feels like danger. Edward longs for the safety of camaraderie, yet his heartbeat echoes the isolation closing in. Memories of laughter shared with Tom float in and out of focus, a stark reminder of the man he used to be. As the chaos swirls around him, he grapples with the moral murkiness of survival versus duty, the line between right and wrong blurring under the relentless onslaught. Hope and despair collide in this desperate struggle for clarity amidst the nightmare unfolding before him. Edward sat alone in the dim light of the tent, the familiar scratch of pen on paper a feeble attempt at expression. He poured his heart into letters addressed to his family, recounting memories of laughter, warmth, and simple joys, yet he hesitated to send them. Each unsent letter became a weight in his pocket, a testament to his isolation in the chaos of war. The ink stained his fingertips as he wrote about the days when the sun rose without the shadow of conflict looming over him. Memories of cricket matches in the village and the scent of his mother's cooking mingled with the acrid smell of gunpowder. The letters, unsealed, became a refuge, a way to articulate the depth of his longing and confusion, yet they also reinforced his sense of exile. Each word brought him closer to home, but reminded him that he was trapped on a battlefield between dreams and reality, unable to traverse the distance separating him from his loved ones. The stillness of the night was shattered as the tranquility of the camp gave way to chaos. A sudden attack pierced the darkness, sending soldiers scrambling for cover, the air thick with tension and fear. Edward's heart raced as he clutched his rifle, adrenaline coursing through him while his hands trembled. In the confusion, the bonds forged in shared hardship were tested like never before. Shouts filled the night, orders screamed amidst the cacophony of gunfire, and the ethos of brotherhood surged through the ranks as they fought together, grappling with panic and resolve. As the ambush unfolded, Edward felt a fierce urgency to protect his comrades. They were family now, entwined in this fabric of survival. In the aftermath, the weight of loss seeped into every corner of his mind, yet he clung to the flicker of human connection forged under fire. The darkness had unveiled their deepest fears, but together they would emerge once more into the light. The echoes of distant gunfire had barely faded when our small contingent gathered in a dimly lit trench to mark what was supposed to be a victory. a victory marked by the sacrifices of those who had fought valiantly and lost their lives in the process. We raised our glasses, but the cheers felt hollow. The weight of their absence pressed heavily upon us, overshadowing the fleeting joy of our achievement. As I glanced at the faces around me, hollowed eyes and weary smiles, I realized that our celebrations were merely a mask for our grief. Every toast was a tribute to friends we would never see again, their names lingering in the air like a haunting whisper. I began to question the worth of this hollow victory. What did we gain truly when it came at such an unspeakable cost? In each clink of our glasses I could feel the echoes of loss resonating deeper within me, intertwining with the essence of survival. As Edward watched the horizon fade into twilight, a heavy silence settled over the camp, punctuated only by distant echoes of artillery. Conversations became whispers among soldiers, each wrestling with their own thoughts on the purpose of their struggle. Was this chaos truly what the world needed? The weight of his comrades' disillusionment mirrored his own. Questions of valor and reason consumed their dialogues. Memories of home haunted him, the warmth of laughter replaced by the cold grip of fear. Edward stood apart, feeling the profound absurdity of their plight. It was as if war itself was a cruel cycle, a trap of violence begetting more violence. Yet amidst this darkness, fleeting moments of clarity pierced through the fog of despair, urging him to find meaning in the madness. As night enveloped them, Edward grappled with a sense of purpose, seeking a light in the deepening shadows. The days marched on with the weight of uncertainty hanging heavily in the air. News of a possible breakthrough flickered through the camp like a candle in the wind, igniting mixed emotions among the men. Optimism was a fragile thread, woven through their weary hearts, tangled with the bitter memories of loss. Edward found himself caught between hope and skepticism. The laughter of his comrades echoed faintly against the backdrop of their shared trauma. In the quiet moments before sleep, he pondered what it might feel like to finally return home, embracing a life untarnished by the ravages of war. Yet doubt lurked in the corners of his mind, whispering that dreams often betray those who dare to desire them. As the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the horizon in hues of orange and purple, Edward clung to these fleeting moments of light, wishing for peace but bracing for more darkness ahead. The final confrontation loomed before Edward and his comrades, a chilling echo of every battle they had endured. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie glow over the battlefield, tension crackled in the air. Fear gripped his heart, but so did an unexpected surge of resolve. Memories of fallen friends surged in his mind, faces and laughter swallowed by the chaos of war. This time they would not fight for glory but for each other, an unbreakable bond forged in fire. The first shots rang out, shattering the stillness. Adrenaline pushed Edward forward. Moments blurred as he navigated through smoke and shadows, confronting his mortality with every breath. He stumbled upon a comrade caught in the fray, instinct driving him to pull him to safety, even as the specter of death danced all around. In that chaotic moment, Edward understood. Fear and courage intertwine, defining who they are amidst the terror. The war was over, yet Edward felt as though he was still ensnared in its grip. As the train chugged towards home, the rhythmic clatter of the wheels reminded him of distant artillery fire. The joy of returning to familiar streets was overshadowed by ghostly memories of comrades lost and moments that had changed him forever. Upon arrival, hearty embraces and warm smiles awaited him, but they felt like shadows of reassurance. He smiled and nodded, knowing they could never fathom the darkness that had nestled in his heart. Laughter rang out around him, yet he felt like a specter watching from the sidelines, haunted by the burdens he could not share. Nights were especially difficult, as memories surged like waves, drowning him in grief. Each day was a struggle to reconcile the man he was before the front lines with the one he had become. Edward yearned for peace, but found himself tangled in the silence of a profound disquiet within. Navigating the choppy waters of civilian life proved more challenging than Edward had imagined. As he returned home, the familiar streets of his small town felt foreign. Each face he encountered a reminder of the unbridgeable gap between their realities and his. Conversations with family and friends felt strained, Words that had once flowed easily were now tangled in silence. They couldn't see the battle scars that stained his soul, nor could they grasp the weight of memories that haunted him. With hesitance, Edward finally reached out for help, shaking off the remnants of the stigma that loomed over mental health. Therapy sessions became safe havens, where vulnerability was embraced and his feelings were validated. Step by step, he began to forge a path forward, acknowledging that healing was a journey, not a destination, and that sharing his experiences could pave the way for understanding and connection, not only for himself, but for others who suffered silently. As Edward sits alone in his room, the weight of silence envelops him like a shroud. The diary, inked with the raw truths of his experiences, becomes a lifeline to the past, a testament to both the camaraderie he lost and the lessons etched into his soul. Each entry captures not just his fears and heartaches, but the voices of his fallen comrades, urging him to remember their stories. He realizes that in sharing these memories, he honors their sacrifices and his own scars. Gathering his courage, Edward decides to reach out to a local veterans group, longing to connect with others who carry similar burdens. As he pens down his final thoughts, he feels a flicker of hope, an understanding that healing lies not in silence, but in the shared experiences of war and peace. In this moment, he vows to not only carry their legacy, but to encourage others to raise their voices, weaving a tapestry of resilience for generations to come.